Hello everyone, my name is Billy and you are listening to Humans of Authenticity. Welcome to AANHPI Heritage Month as we recognize the contribution and influence of Asian, Native Hawaiians and Pacific Islanders descent in the US. Our guest today is Deanna Singh from Uplifting Impact. She is an incredibly well-respected figure among the DEI community. She is also part of the LinkedIn Top Voice program, and I can't believe I have the opportunity to introduce her to you guys. Welcome to Humans of Authenticity, Deanna.
I've been looking forward to this conversation, so I'm so honored to be here.
I appreciate your time being with us. Would you like to introduce yourself to our audience first?
Sure. So my name is Deanna Singh, and I actually am the Chief Change Agent for a company. The umbrella organization is called Flying Elephant. We support actually 4 different enterprises. I won't go through all of them right now, but they're in a variety of different sectors, but all of them with this mission of how do we shift power to marginalized communities. And so I'm always so excited to be able to have conversations that really allow for people to peel back, right, and understand a little bit more about why that's important and why that's the company's mission.
That's awesome. So use your word to peel back all of those layers. I also like how you focus immediately on the work to support the marginalized group. Can you tell me more about what got you to this space in the first place?
Absolutely. So, when I talk about power, I think it was something that I had to learn over time, right? At the beginning, I used to say that my purpose was to take my blessings and experiences and opportunities and multiply them. So when I was younger, like teenage years, whenever anybody would ask me or if I was like thinking about whether I should do, I would always use that, like, how can I multiply those things that I have as my toolkit to be able to walk alongside other people, right? And really, but I think that what happened and where like power came in and where I was able to get clearer about marginalized communities is that throughout my life and career, right, and all the different experiences that I had, what I started to see and is that people use the word empower. And what I really started to see was that that didn't fit well with the way that we actually show up in the world. Because I actually believe that every one of us has power, right? Like every single individual, no matter who they are, where they come from, what their background, like everybody has power. So the question isn't so much like, I don't have the ability. I can't walk up to you and be like, here's 5 power widgets. It's not a video game that we're in. So I can't give it to you. But what I can do is try and create systems and structures and opportunities that allow for your power to shine through. And I think that's where I started to like see the most change is when people recognized, like, even myself, right? When I recognized that I had power and I could use that power, that's when I felt a change in like what I thought I could do in the world. And so being able to be part of other people's stories and kind of supporting that, it just brings me like the most joy. So where it comes from is just this, I think the evolution of understanding how much power determines whether or not a person really can thrive or not.
I love how you say I have power in a very strong, broad sense. Can you tell
Yeah.
me a stories of when you first realizing that you have power? And taking a step back, I'm an Asian person living in a North Asian environment. That sometimes makes me feel very uncomfortable and feel very powerless. Probably not the right word, but that's where, the truth is.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a time when you feel like you have power?
Yeah, so I have like 400 million examples of this. But I would just say, right, that like a lot of times when we think about kind of what's our story, like where do we go for some of those like moments of motivations, that feeling, right, like of being like, I'm an outsider. I'm living in a country that is not reflective of my own background was very much a part of my own story, right? I'm Black and I'm Asian Indian. So my father is from Punjab, India. My mom is from Mississippi. And so when I was growing up, like finding another person who was Black and Indian, right? And who like ate roti, but also ate greens, who could speak fluently in Punjabi, but also had like, really curly, beautiful, tight curls, right? Like it was just, I kind of always was in a space where I was an outlier, whether that was in my family, whether that was in my schools, whether that was out in community. I would always get this kind of look like, understand what's going on there, and then as a child, you don't know what that is or like what that's coming from. And so I can think of a lot of instances though where that happened, right? Like there was this moment of like somebody really getting stressed out or maybe even getting angry with me or even because they couldn't put me in a box, right? Like I didn't fit nicely into the ways that they were dividing the world. And there was definitely a part of my childhood where I was like trying to shy away from that. Like, oh my gosh, I should do better to try and fit into their boxes. But I think like I had so many amazing mentors along the way who created these moments that showed me like, yeah, no, that's actually pretty awesome that you can speak 2 languages, and at 5 years old, you were already helping people with their driver's license. Like, actually that's pretty cool that you spend, a month of the year, living in India and can like, oh, that's pretty cool that. And so all of a sudden I started to I think embrace those things that made me different as opposed to trying to quell them. And so I can think of a lot of specific instances, but I think that's kind of like an overarching thing that happened to me over and over and over and over again as a child. And I think it built that muscle so that when I got to different spaces as, an adult or a young adult, I could utilize it, not just internally facing, but also externally facing.
Yeah, I can start sensing the sense of uplifting here. So, reflecting on your stories and all of the experience there, if there is one thing that you really, really love about that experience, what would that be?
I told you before that like the greatest moments of joy that I have, right? Where like every one of my joy cylinders is overflowing or high. I don't know if that's the right analogy, but like I'm overflowing with like joy. It's coming out of my pores. Moments where I see people fully realize that they have the ability to do something that nobody else does. Like when people really understand, like in my like unique blend of experiences and skills and talents and the way that I think and all that I have this like unique purpose in the world, being able to witness that, not just the realization, but then also the activation of that is literally like, I feel like the best feeling in the world. So when I think about like, what are those moments? It's those moments where somebody's like, I just had a call this week with somebody and they're like, hey, I read your book, Purposeful Hustle. And after reading your book, I decided I was going to take a step back from this pathway that other people had sort of dictated for me. And I was going to try something that I was really passionate about. I just wanted to let you know, like, it changed my whole life. And
Um,
so it's not that I did something, right? It's like what they did to activate, but then to be able to bear witness to that, I don't think it gets cooler.
that's so cool.
Yeah.
I'm just wrapping my head around that. That is so cool. Thank you for sharing that story with us.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
I still want to invite you to share a particular stories or a particular defining moment with us because I've heard a lot of powerful, inspirational experience at a very high level. Is there a defining moment or any
Yeah.
particular moment that you can bring to reality for us?
Absolutely. So I will tell you that a lot of the work that I've been able to do in my career and just like in community, a lot of it has actually come from a place of pain. So like something has happened that really like disturbs my heart. And so I can share a lot of these examples. My team always says like Deanna will build or break things in order to make this like idea of shifting power. And it is, I will, right? So one example, many years ago, I was a community leader and one of my roles was in helping convene people. And I was really frustrated because at the time there was a lot of things in my home city that we were ending up on these lists, right? Like one of the lists that we ended up on was the worst place to raise Black or brown boys. And I am the mother of 2 brown boys, right? And so I was really frustrated by this. And so, as in part of my role and, responsibility, I decided that I was going to convene all of these leaders, right? Like everything you kind of think of, like policymakers, people who had money, right? Like the people that you would think you needed to bring to a room to make change. And I just remember being like so excited. Like, oh my gosh, it's going to be an amazing day. We're going to be able to come up with some solutions and we're really going to be able to lift up our young men. And it's just going to be so awesome. And that's not what the meeting turned out to be, right? It was really like wah, 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 wah. All the stories and all the rehearsed reasons of why our children couldn't be successful or why we couldn't be successful for them. And I just remember getting so frustrated in that moment to a point where like I felt like I was going to explode, right? So I get up and I say my piece and I'm like, "Hey, everybody in here," and I'm sure I was not very eloquent because I was so angry, right? But I was like, everybody in here is getting paid to be advocates for children. And this sounds more like we're eulogizing them, right? Like we've given up. Like, what is happening here? And then I sat down. I didn't do a good job speaking, but this other person crossed the room, like heard me. She got up and she like took everything I was trying to say and made it make sense. And I was like, yes, right. I have another ally in the room. I'm like, great. We're going to change the tone. I'm getting excited again. And then the next person is like, "Wah, wah, wah," and I was done. I thought I was going to flip the table. That's how angry I was. Like, I was like, oh, here goes, right? I'm going to be in the headlines tomorrow because I've lost it. But instead, what I did is I reached down into my purse and I pulled out a pen and a piece of paper and I started to write. And I wrote and I wrote and I wrote. Everybody left the room. The lights turned off on me. I didn't even notice that people were gone because I was just so like, you know what I mean? I was trying so hard to just like focus my energy into this space. And what I wrote was a letter to my kids. And I was like, hey, I just want you to know if something happens to your father or me, like you need to know that you are amazing. Like you're so smart. You are full of potential because there is a really bad PR problem right now around young boys of color. So I wrote this whole thing. It was around Valentine's Day. I thought, oh, you know what I'm going to do? Like after I got up and like I felt better, right? I think writing is healing. And so I got up and Valentine's Day, I'm like, okay, I'm going to take this. I'm going to turn it into a little PDF with my kids' pictures. That'd be so cute. I'll give it to them for Valentine's Day. And I did it. I stayed up late. I got it all together, but then I couldn't go to sleep. And I was like, you know what? My kids are going to be like, Mom, you do this every day. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's not new news. So I was like, okay, you know what I'll do? I'll go find books that feature positive images of brown boys because I love books and here are my kids and that'll be like the resource because it'll stick with them more than just what I say every day. And couldn't find anything.
Wow.
And so that was the moment that I actually decided. So in the middle of the night, I decided, you know what I wrote about my children is what I feel about all of our children, right? Like every child deserves to see themselves reflected in a positive light. So how do we do that? And yeah, and then that turned into I'm a Boy of Color, which was my very first book. So I accidentally wrote my first book. Now 6 books later, I understand the power, right, of being able to have the written word. But I literally like Googled, how do you write a book? I didn't know. But it came from this place of like feeling like my power was being taken away and then deciding like, no, this is broken. And I'm either going to be part of the solution or what? Like, there is no other thing, right? Like, I'm going to be part of the solution. And what does that look like in this moment? Well, in this moment, it looks like me doing this wild thing that I know nothing about, that I have no business doing, because I know that this is something that's lacking. And if I'm missing it, there's probably other people who are missing it too.
Thank you so much for bringing that story to life.
Yeah.
There are so many things that I love about that stories. I'm hearing a very strong sense of self-awareness of your own core value in that work, in the way that you pull everyone together and be very passionate about vocalizing those ideas and the stories and the struggling. I also hear the visions that you carry through and hearing the goodness in how you want to make an impact. So now we go back to the earlier of the conversations where you say we shift the powers to the marginalized group. And what I'm hearing is if you don't find anything, you just created it.
Yeah.
And that is such a good attitude. I'm loving this. Thank you for
Yeah.
sharing that.
Yeah. Like I just feel like everything that you look at, like literally those of you who are listening or watching or whatever, like look around in the room that you're in. Everything that you are looking at right now, everything that I'm looking at right now, at one point didn't exist, right? in order for it to be there, to like manifest itself as a thing, somebody had to have the ability to have the idea, but I think even more importantly, they had to have the ability to bring it into fruition.
Mm.
Nothing actually happens without an idea getting activated. And so, yeah, like I like to think about not just like what we see and what's here or whatever, but what also don't we see? Like what could be possible? Because when you spend more time in that space of imagination and what could be and all of that, I think that's where you really get the opportunity to fully understand like what your impact could be, right? And what you could do. But it's scary. It's definitely scary.
It sounds scary, but I'm excited that you bring it up because it's a perfect segue to get to the second part of these conversations. Talk about your selected keyword.
Yes.
So I provided you with a list of 12. Which word do you select?
I selected risk.
And why risk? And why bringing risk to this conversation?
So I think in recent years, I have just realized, especially with women that I'm, mentoring, and especially with, people from marginalized groups, that we don't often talk about risk and the role of risk in our ability to move forward. I think that in a lot of ways, given my background, and I can speak for my own, experiences too, but like given my background and sort of the way that I was taught very much like you do this and then this happens and then you do this and then you do this. And this is sort of the pathway that you should aspire to. And this is really the only way that you should be thinking about how you want to grow. And so that idea of like being open to imagination and what this might take and all of that, I feel like in many ways, like it's kind of beaten out of us, right? Like this ability to fail and be excited about that. And those kinds of things, like it just, we over time, we kind of learned like, nope, those things are not high value. And what it does is it takes our risk tolerance and it actually, I think, brings it down. But what I have been reflecting on, especially in the last couple of years, I mean, I'm a chronic entrepreneur, right? So like I have been founding things and trying stuff and doing whatever. And I find that I'm a builder. Like that's where I like to play. And I'm not like a really big risk taker in the traditional way that we maybe think about risk takers, right? Like I'm not like, I'm going to just go do this and do this and do this and without thoughtfulness. Like I definitely take a lot of calculated risks. But when I find entrepreneurs who are stuck or people who are stuck in their like professional journeys, or maybe even stuck in how they're showing up in community or how they're showing up in their family, a lot of times when you trace it back to like, what is keeping you in that place where you're stuck? It's that they're so afraid of a risk. And they can't even sometimes define what the risk is, but they are just so afraid of risk in general because they haven't had a lot of practice in what that looks like. And so I've tried to become as a understanding that like the way that I deal with risk is sometimes a little bit more different than what we, typically are taught in this space. I've been trying to be more intentional about talking about it. So when I saw it on your list, I was like, let's go, let's talk about it.
Let's unpack it. You have given me so many good material to start unpacking. One of the points you mentioned earlier is to look at bringing down the risk tolerance. Do you have a list of tips or practice that you're going through or a pathway? Can you talk
Yeah.
through that process?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's say that there's something that you really, really think would be awesome or cool or exciting or like help you get to your next path. And you have that moment, right? Like everybody kind of knows what that moment feels like. It's like this burst of like, oh, I just saw that person did it, or I just saw that I never really thought about it as a possibility. But what if right? We know what that moment feels like. But we also know what the moment feels like right after it, right? And it happens to almost everybody that you can imagine. I think there's probably a small select group of people who don't have this next moment, but it's also, then it's like, nah, can't do it. And then boom, 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 right? All of a sudden, a bullet list of reasons come. You don't have the degree. Don't have that background. You can't, whatever it might be that's in your head. And so we start to discount ourselves before we have even given the potential of what that could be any room to grow. It's like when somebody hands us this seed, and before we can drop it in the ground, we've crumbled it in our hands, right? And so of course that seed's not going to grow. It's not going to produce any fruit because we've already we haven't even put it into the soil and we've already decided that it's not going to bear fruit. It's not going to have any life. And so some of the things that I try and help people like think through is to remind, let's go back. Let's spend some time thinking about that like wild idea or that thing that's like been on your bucket list or that, you just feel like you're so passionate about. Let's go back and first uncover that. Let's find it. Because a lot of times we bury it, right? And you got to look back like a year, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years to find what that was the spark for you. So let's find that first. And I call that our purpose, right? That's why I wrote the book, Purposeful Hustles. Like, what is that purpose, that thing that really drives you? And then after you figure that out, then there's a couple of tools that I like to, people to go through. I can't give them all to you because we don't have enough time. But one of my favorite ones is like, okay, now let's think of all the reasons why you're afraid, like, or why that might not work, or what, let's just think of them, right? Let's just call them out. Okay. So I'll use the example, like, I want to go back to school and get my doctorate degree. Okay, cool. Why couldn't, well, it's really expensive. Well, I wouldn't be able to do it because I have to keep my job. Well, the kids are still in school. Well, I have this responsibilities. Well, I've been out of school for a really long time. Well, I don't know if I'd get accepted. Whoa, I don't know. Right. All the things. It could be, I don't know. I don't, the campus might be too big and I couldn't find my classes. Like everything from the big things, like I can't afford it, to like the tiny things, like, would it be weird to be in a classroom again? I haven't been there for a long time, or whatever the things are, but put them all down. And here's where the magic happens. After you make that list, then I always do everything in graphs, right? So
Yeah.
the next column is, what is the probability that that thing will actually happen? And the reason why that's so powerful is that, and I just do high, medium, low, right? Most things are medium or low. But because we haven't written it down, because we haven't actually taken the time to dissect it in this way, everything has the same volume. So not being able to find my classes and not being able to afford it have the same volume in my head. But they shouldn't, right? Not being able to afford it is a much bigger risk than not being able to find my classes. Like, you just ask somebody and you'll be able to get to your class. It's a very low risk. They shouldn't have the same volume in my head. So then what you do is in your third column, you write, okay, what could I do that would help mitigate, right? That would help me get over whatever this fear is. Or maybe if it's a high, to bring it down to a moderate. If it's a moderate, to bring it down to a low. If it's low, maybe to get it off the list altogether. And what you find is that the steps are often not that hard. Okay, so let's take the high one in the example I just gave you. I can't afford it. Do you have to pay for all of it right now? No. Could you do it over a time period that allows for you to, make it more manageable for you? I don't know. Have you ever heard of scholarships? Right? Like there's so many different ways that we could think about how to mitigate even that biggest one. So yes, it's still real, but instead of it being like something that's going to stop you in your path, it's like, no, what it can actually do is become my to-do list. Like how I now can move forward can be guided by what I have been able to uncover in just going through this very simple exercise.
What I love about this is you give us a way to have a lot more clarity in the thought process. This is where I am at the moment. There are so many things happening and I can easily be overwhelmed of things.
Hmm?
And then every thinking gets really messy. But you're giving me a really good framework to turn all of those mess into linear thinking point. And I love how you turn something can be risky into a to-do list.
Yeah.
And not really just a reframe of the same thing, but at the same time help me to reframe my mindset as well.
So cool. So what it does is then you can say like, hey, I'm actually being logical, because part of the risk thing, and I think what stops people, at least I can speak again, from what myself and what
Of
I've
course.
seen, is that you think that it's inappropriate, it's being, maybe you think that it's just it's not, I'm at a loss for the word, but it's like it's irresponsible. That's the word I was trying to think about. Like that if I do this thing, that I can be seen or I'll be perceived as irresponsible. right? If I go back to school, be irresponsible because people will be like, well, you already have a great job. You already, are doing this. You already got your undergrad or your master's or whatever, right? Like, or you're already certified in this thing. Why would you want to, or you already have children, whatever it is, right? Like, and you start to play out these voices, they're really mean voices, right? Of like why you might think that that might be perceived in this way that is considered irresponsible. But once you start to think about it and you put it into this responsibility category of like, no, I'm being responsible because I have made a list of all the things that I could do to actually get me to this next step, right? And I have, like you said, reframed it into a way that actually makes it make sense for me. Then when if you do get any of those things, because sometimes those voices are just fake, we've made them up to like help us justify like being stuck. But if you get to those places, you can just say like, hey, I know you think XYZ, but I have actually realized like you think that it'd be too expensive for me. I understand, but you might not know this, right? As a working person, my company is going to support me in doing this. I actually can still be working as I go through it. I actually got a scholarship because right? Like you can start to use that as part of your talking points to even get back at this place of, this actually is the most responsible thing. And it takes it out of that risk category and takes it into this is the way, right, that I see myself, and it supports the way that I'm trying to carry myself in the world. So I don't know. I think risk is fun. I think if you live your life and you're always just playing it safe, whatever safe is, because safe
Mm.
is also speak up, you don't really get to see all the corners of your life. You don't get to see all the corners of what you could be.
Yeah.
And it's in those corners. It's like, as soon as I try something that's like scary, like if this is my comfort zone, all of a sudden it becomes this wide and it becomes this wide. And you start to realize like there actually is no end to it. And that's exhilarating.
Yeah. So that's how we're expanding our comfort zone there that I'm hearing.
Yeah.
You actually also remind me of the notion of us being scared of showing up as who we are to the world. Again, going back to the fact that we don't look like the rest of the community around us. And that can become a risk
Mhm.
for us to show up as who we are. Do you have a similar experience? Is that a valid feelings? Do you think risky to show the world who we are?
Oh yeah, for sure. Right. It's really hard to be like, I'm going to step outside of the way that other people may be perceiving me or where they put me or where they want to put me. And I'm going to actually share who I am. But there's a lot of like quotes, and I'm not gonna get them as beautifully and eloquently as they're often shared in our circle media chains, right? But there's a lot of things that say, like, what's really interesting about you, about me, about the person who's listening, right? Is that there's actually nobody in the world that's like you. No one. So like I can't be you. I could try, but I couldn't do what you do well because I can't. I literally, physically, mentally, spiritually, all the things. I cannot do that. The only thing that I can actually do that nobody else is be who I am. And so again, when we kind of come back to that idea of power,
Hmm.
that's powerful, right? Nobody can be Deanna, right? With all my flaws, with all the things that I do well, nobody can do that. Only I can do that. And so when I don't show up, I'm like depriving myself, but I'm also depriving others of being able to have that experience. I remember that I had a mentor who once told me, like, the best pieces of art no one will ever see. Stop and think about that for a minute, right? And I was like, what do you mean, right? What do you mean? Well, because the best artists in the world has a piece or has drawn something or created a sculpture, but it's very possible has never shown it to anybody. So there's a high probability that the best art that exists in the world has never been seen because it requires so much courage to show up and share and show up and show what you have. Right? It's not just creating the piece, it's also being able to be like, I'm going to put it on display, and there's going to be some people who hate it and some people who love it, and maybe nobody loves it. You just really like, I don't know, that just is always really, really stuck with me, right? Like, I want that artist. If you're listening, if you're the best artist in the world, I want you to get over your fear and I want you to show the world because we need to experience that beauty, right? Like that will make us better human beings. It will enrich our lives. Please don't put it in a drawer or hide it behind a closet or, hide it behind because I need that from you. I can't create art the way that you could create art. So it's the same thing when you think about our personalities and you think about who we are as people. Like, I need you to show up because when you show up fully, then I can be a better person. And it also gives me permission to show up fully too. So it's this beautiful like network that we have, an opportunity that we have, but oh, is it hard, right? And that's why this mentor of mine was saying there's a high probability we will never see the best art.
That is such a good analogy and very encouraging analogy so that we can show ourselves a bit more. I love that. The best piece of art no one will probably ever see. I do want to stay at this conceptual level a little bit for one more question.
Sure.
So let's say if we are not afraid of showing up as who we are, individuality, do you think that the world is ready to accept that? So all of a sudden there is this weird, unique persons just trying to show everything out. Would that be too much for our current level of acceptance?
So I think what's really interesting is that sometimes we talk about this conversation of showing up fully as sort of binary, you're on or you're off, right? Like it's you're up or you're down. But the reality is that how I show up in this moment is going to be different than later on tonight when I'm cuddling with my kids. It's going to be different, when I go see my girlfriends, tomorrow morning for brunch. It's going to be different because in all of those instances, there's different parts of me that are being illuminated and that are being shown. And so I think that that's one thing that I think is really important, right? Because like, we use the example of like, if I played the clarinet, which I do not, right? It's a beautiful instrument. I don't play it. But like, if that was like part of like who I am, but I walked into a grocery store playing the clarinet, and then I walked into a spa playing the clarinet, and then I walked into a school playing the clarinet, and then I walked to the doctor's office playing the clarinet, and then you see, like in some of those instances, maybe be more okay than not okay, right? Like in some of the, because we all are part of some social constructs that actually allow for us to thrive. And so I think it's important to remember that showing up fully as who you are, I'm the same person right now that I am on the podcast as I will be with my girlfriends, as I will be with my kids. So, right, there's a core part of who I am and how I show up. It's really essential. And I think knowing what that is takes time, right? It takes like life. It takes a little bit of experience. It takes being in situations. So that part, yeah. But the other components of it, you got to understand like where and how you, from an integrity standpoint and authenticity, I'm making up words, but an authentic place, right? You have to understand like where that is too. And so your original question was, is the world ready for that? And I think that it's not a one-way street. Like the world has to be ready to receive you. You have to also be ready to be in the world, right? And to participate in the world in a way that's meaningful and lifting others up. So I hope that made sense, right? It's not either or to me. It's a how. Like, how are you doing that?
Thank you. I think you make it sound so effortless. I know that this is hard work showing up, and I'm hearing that we need to adjust ourselves depending on the context that we show up. And this is hard work. Yes.
Yeah, let me just share it. Like, okay, so this is something I tell people all the time. You mentioned this earlier, like, oh, it sounds like you have a lot of self-reflection. One of the things that I think we are missing the most, and I see this especially with like leaders that I coach and stuff, is really giving ourselves that time for reflection, right? Like really giving us our time for some introspection. And so one of the things, I had this great session that I did many, many, many years ago. It was actually a room. It was at Harvard. It was a room full of all of these women entrepreneurs, but then also young women who were thinking about going into the entrepreneurial space, right? Like considering it. It's just this powerful room of like, whoa, we're in here. We're having these big conversations and big talks. And one of the things that I just said was, I was like, one thing I would encourage you to do. And I was speaking specifically to the younger, right, generation of young women in the crowd, but speaking to everybody and speaking to myself also was like one suggestion that I would have is like spend some time understanding like who you are and what that means, right? Like, what is that core component, right? What are things that like are non-negotiable for you? So for me, for example, like I'm a joyful person. So there was a time where I'd be like, okay, I have to be like kind of buttoned up and, like be real serious and, and I'd be like, that's not who I am. And it's really not fun. And it depletes my energy. And there are situations and times, and of course, like situations where it's appropriate to be that way. But I'm just like, you ask me a question, I'm going to answer it right to the best of my ability. And I like telling stories and that's who I am. So it's going to be okay. That's a core component of what you get when you get Deanna Singh. And I'm okay with that. Right. And so, but it took me a while to get there. Right. I had to wrestle with it. I had to really name that as one of my core values. Another thing is like, I'm the type of person who really, really, really wants to embrace others. That's who I am. Right. And I can say that. I can be very clear about that. Like, this is who I am. You don't get there though if you don't have the time to actually do some reflection. And so that's one thing that I just like really encourage that room, because then when you get tested, and you really learn it by getting tested, right?
Yeah.
You walk into a space and people are like, I can't believe that you are not, dressed in all black and you don't have your hair all pulled back and you don't, and you're like, well, sorry, I feel icky. That makes me feel like I'm not being true to who I am. So that I know that I understand that that's a line for me. Like, right. I'm going to wear bright colors. I'm going to be joyful. I'm going to smile a lot. Like I'm going to make jokes if it's appropriate, and then I can make it or try to make a jokes. I don't know that I'm funny, but I like to try, and so now I know that. So now I can show up that way. But you gotta have that reflection, and you gotta have those moments of like, oh, that was icky. Why did that feel icky? What does that mean about who I am as a person?
That's really cool. Thank you. And I'm hearing some sort of prompts, questions in the story that you've just shared as well. So I'll try to note that down in the show notes afterwards. Thank you so much.
Sure.
We're getting to the end of the episode very soon, and I wish that we could have another conversations for this. I'd love to know what's next for you in the coming 12 months.
Yeah, so a couple of things. Number one big like thing that we decided to do as a family very, very early on. So my husband and I have been married. We've been best friends through 10. This a couple of weeks from now, we'll celebrate 19 years of marriage, a lot of life to be together. And one of the things that we decided early on in our marriage is no matter like how many pennies we had or didn't have, whatever, that we were going to make sure we incorporated travel into our experience. And then when we had children, it was very much about like, it's not just we're, going to visit or be tourists someplace, but how do we actually become travelers, right? Like, how do we actually be part of the communities that we go to? So I'm very excited because we will be so every year we take at least a month sabbatical with our children. We go someplace. Last year we spent 6 months in Mexico.
Nice.
Again, it's right. Like people kind of, but this year we'll spend a month in New York City. So really looking forward to that. Another big thing for us is we recently just purchased a old turn of the century mansion. And so
Congratulations.
thank you. So very excited about that. But that space will be the first time that as a company, we have a physical space. And so building that out and being able to invite people in and building community and providing trainings and doing all of that in our own home. And it's a 8,000 square foot beautiful home, right? To be able to do that and open up that space is really exciting. So that's another very big thing that's happening for us. And then the third thing, that I would say is that we are constantly thinking about how we provide more resources into the community. And so I've been working on, we'll see what it becomes. Perhaps it's another book. Perhaps it's, I don't know, but I've been calling it More Than Merit, and with the subtitle, working subtitle. So everybody just remember this is all working, right? Like a mentor in your pocket, and really trying to focus on what does it feel like when you're a first a fewer only. I call that group of people groundbreakers, right? So you're a groundbreaker because you're the first in your family, first in your community, first from your identity group in like these big, organizational or corporate spaces. How do you navigate that? What are some of the tools and tips and some of the things even we talked about here today that can help you manage through some of the challenges that are really unique for being in those first few and only seats? So I feel like that's going to be a lot of what I do in the next year is just trying really hard to serve that group of those groundbreakers. And yeah, we'll see what it turns into.
That is exciting. I look forward to seeing that book. I mean, that resonates so much. Again, being an Asian in this space, there are so many times that I'm being the only Asian on the boardroom or in an executive leadership teams. And I don't know, all of a sudden I feel the pressure. All of a sudden I become the Asian.
Yeah.
Speaking on behalf of the rest of the Asian out there, I'm not saying that I do that, but all of a sudden that's become the feeling and the pressure on the shoulder.
Oh yeah. It's an enormous weight, right? And then it's like, so you're managing that, but then you're managing like all this new territory. You don't have, anybody that you can go talk to about it. There's things that happen to you. And so you can start to feel like, did that really happen? Or am I just making that up? Or right. And like just navigating all of that space. And honestly, I spent my whole career doing that. And my goal is in writing the book or whatever this ends up being, we definitely are hosting a retreat. So that's another big thing that's happening. We're calling it our Groundbreakers retreat. It'll be September 18th and 19th. So I'll make sure you get all the information to share. But I don't want people to have to deal with the same things that I did, right? Like there's a way for us to share this information that allows for people to move much more freely in their spaces. And again, I told you at the very beginning, like, what do I love? I love watching people thrive. And so for me, it's like, how do we provide those resources and those tools? Because oftentimes you just have to learn them by mistake or learn them by chance. And it doesn't have to be that way. So how do we bring that information, make sure it gets disseminated in a way that really can empower, and not empower, help people find their power, bring their power forward, right? Stand on their power, open up their power, embrace their power, all the things with their power. How do we do that? And I think that's where I'm spending a lot of my thought space. And during the sabbatical, I'll be spending a lot of my thought and getting ready for that retreat, but then also in thinking about how we plug that into more and more and more people.
Yeah. I look forward to seeing the end product of that. That is so exciting. We are
Yeah.
getting to the last questions of the episode soon. Is there any last minute comments or any thoughts about risk or anything else you'd like to share with us?
No, I just think like this is another thing I'll just leave you all with, right? Sometimes when you're thinking about something that's risky, one thing that is a good exercise to put in your back pocket is to think about what's the risk, not just of doing the thing, but what's the risk of not doing the thing,
Yeah.
right? Because sometimes that risk of not doing it is actually bigger than the risk of doing it. And if we don't ask ourselves the question, then we won't see that. It's easy to miss that. And so, yeah, I think that would be my final thought is don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to ask yourself the question, what's the risk if I,
What's the risk if we don't do that?
yeah, if I don't show up fully as who I am, if I don't make the time for reflection, if I don't take that thing I'm passionate about, if I don't take that thing that I feel like I'm purposed to do, if I don't they take that thing that I'm uniquely positioned to do in the world, like if I don't show people the art that only I can create,
Mhm.
what's the risk of that?
There we go. We'll let that sink in. The last question for this episode, and I hope you have fun with it. So, if you were going on your dream vacation tomorrow, assume that you have all the necessity. What is the one additional item that you would take with you and why?
I have all my necessities and I have one other item. I think I would, well, I don't know what you consider to be part of your necessities. So that's a hard question, but I think that I would probably take pen and paper if that wasn't considered to be part of the necessities. I never have ever thought, even though I've written 6 books, right? I've never thought about myself as like a writer,
Right.
but I do appreciate and have found, there's evidence that shows if you write down a goal, I think they say it's like you're 60% more likely to actually achieve it. I do think that there's something really powerful from taking what's in your head and putting it into a place that you can see it reflected back at you. And so, yeah, I think most of my big transformational moments have come in times where I've given myself the space to be able to have pen and paper and quiet and yeah, and just giving myself the opportunity to see where that goes.
That's cool.
A tour, a trip, and you can always take a trip, right? Like taking a trip on top of a trip.
The trip outside and the trip inside of mine as well. I love that. Thank you.
Yeah.
This is the end of the episode. Thank you again for your time and sharing your story with us today.
I am Deanna Singh, and you are listening to Humans of Authenticity.